There are moments when talking with parents feels heavier than it should. You try to share a concern and they hear criticism. You try to explain you worry and they shut down. Both of you love each other, yet the words get tangled in ways no one intended. Communication becomes the hardest part of the journey. Not the decisions, not the planning. Simply trying to be heard. Welcome to Seniors Home Zone, where we reflect on life's transitions and talk about what matters most. I'm Rebecca Finnegan, and today we are talking about connection, the kind that helps families hear each other again. This conversation is called The Pledge of a Lifetime because the framework we explore today offers families a path to calmer, kinder communication. Mark Oelze is a dynamic speaker, trainer, and author who has spent more than 3 decades helping people build healthier communication and rich relational cultures. Drawing from 35 years as a marriage counselor, he developed Pledge Talk, a clear 6-step sequential process that turns arguments into productive conflict conversations and lasting peace. His work equips families, churches, and organizations to create safe spaces where difficult conversations become transformational moments. Mark is the author of The Pledge of a Lifetime and is committed to seeing Pledge Talk strengthen relationships across communities. He and his wife, Zorin, live in Wichita, Kansas. They have 3 grown children and 1 grandchild. I met Mark in October of 2024 when I was at a senior home coach conference and reconnected with him last month while at another senior home coach conference. I feel this is an important topic, especially this time of year. Mark, I'm grateful to have you here with us on Seniors Home Zone. For someone who is hearing about the Pledge of a Lifetime for the first time, what moment made you realize it could transform communication inside families?
Great question. Thank you, Rebecca, and thank you for having me here. I hope and pray this will be a blessing to you and your audience, and an encouragement and a help. But a good question. So I've been in the field of counseling for 40 years, and most of those years in marriage and family counseling. So I have an office, a couple comes in to see me, and 4 out of 5 of them within the first minute say we can't communicate. And I as a couple or as a family, and I watch them for just a couple minutes. And in my head, I'm thinking, they're right. They can't communicate. So it stirred me over and over again to say, what's going wrong? What can we do different to help us to get down the track, if you will, to having a good conversation rather than derailing the conversation over and over again? And that was one of the first things I started noting. I just kind of started noting, what was it, the steps that they took with each other that were not helpful. When they did this, the conversation literally derailed, the train derailed, if you will, and caused much havoc and damage. What was it, those specific steps that they took, or ways that they responded? And then one night I remember I went up and talked to my wife, because I have an office attached to my home. So I go up 3 stairs and I go into the other room and I talked with my wife. And I said, honey, this is an area, the conflict resolution in particular, but communication as a whole, this is an area I think you and I do pretty well. And we sat back and said, what is it we do that's really helpful to, again, moving that train down the track, getting to where we want to go? And we compared those steps we take with the ones that I see down in my office over and over again that derails conversations. And we developed Pledge, a 6-step sequence that, again, helps move that train down the track. It helps create healthy communication, or turning a conflict or an argument or a fight into a healthy and helpful conflict conversation rather than that fight, an argument. The 6 steps, the sequence.
Tell me your story, why this is so important to you.
Well, there's 2 things. Again, one is, I would say, why is it important to me with marriage and family? And then why is it important for me to be on your show and others like this in talking with seniors? I'll come back to that one in a minute. My first thought is, why is this important just in life? Again, we all have one of these. Okay.
Yeah.
So we're all communicating and we all want to be heard and understood. I know that to be true myself. I grew up feeling over and over and over and over again like I was not being heard. And so the result of that was it kind of caused me to just pull back in life and pull back in relationships because of that. Uh, you want to be heard. I want to be heard. The couples in my office want to be heard. The husband and wife wants to be heard. The child wants to be heard. I know it. I see it. And I know the pain firsthand of not being heard. And I see it over and over again. The pain, the disappointment, the hurt, the sadness, the frustration in the people that I work with. So on some level, that's it. That's part of my why overall that I really want to change and help people to do this well. There's a larger issue as well. We live in a very polarized time in our nation, and sadly, we are not listening. And the people who are most prominent, most visible, right, are politicians. They do, in my mind, a horrible job at listening to the other. I don't think they are listening to each other. I think
No.
all they're doing is doing everything they can to be heard. They're trying to get the other person to hear them. All they're doing is arguing their point, and they're not doing to the other what they wish the other would do to them, which is listen to understand them.
Right. They're just saying what's in their head to get it out. And that's what most conversations are about.
And that is so true.
Yeah.
Sadly, so
Yeah.
so true. So we don't connect.
Right. No, we don't. I know you have a story about your dad, and I think that'll help my audience understand a little bit more what you actually went through and why Pledge Talk is so important.
Yeah. So my dad is he 6'3", pretty well built person, and pretty vocal and very sociable. Not a mean vocal, but very loud, very sociable, commanding conversations. Right. And again, I think
Mhm.
all of that, as well as a number of other experiences in my life, led to me again just kind of feeling I can't be heard, don't even know how to speak up to be heard. Right. So that's kind of my general background that I can shaped a lot of where I've come from and so forth. Fast forward many years, and my parents 2 years ago are living by themselves. My dad is 88 at the time. My mom is soon to be 90 at
Mm,
that time. And we have some growing concerns that they shouldn't be living by themselves anymore. And we began looking around other places where might suggest that they live. I met Catherine Ambrose,
yeah.
and she helped me to think through some of the ramifications of them living by themselves and what is available out there that could be helpful. So we started finding a couple different places that I wanted to recommend to my parents. So one particular afternoon, my sister was in town, and we went to visit my mom and dad, planning to uh, talk them into going into a place of assisted living. We went in, started having just a normal conversation, and at some point, I turned the conversation into this subject. Well, it didn't take long for me to see, like almost immediately, my dad was really not interested. In fact, he was frustrated. There was tension filling the room rather quickly. Defensiveness began, and I just pushed back. I was defensive towards his defensiveness. He reacted, I reacted, he reacted, I reacted, arguing our points about why I think they should be in there, and he was arguing why he doesn't think they should be in there, and things escalated
Mhm.
as they
Quickly,
do,
I'm sure.
and they do quickly as happens, and when we argue and fight, and when it's just being reactive to each other, things do escalate quickly. Finally, I just jumped in and I said, "Dad, I'm just in 100% disagreement with you." And my dad came back immediately and I'm 100% in disagreement with you.
Not a good situation.
Things got quiet. Neither of us said anything. We just stared at each other until a few moments in, I hear my mom in her meek, beautiful voice say, maybe we should get something to eat
Kind of smooth things over.
and break the tension and change the focus of the
Yeah.
conversation. So we did. We all took a breath and we walked into their dining room and we had some food. So we sat quietly at the table, very little conversation. And the meal was over. I left and I didn't say anything for 3 days to my dad.
It's a long
That was the
time.
worst conflict he and I had ever had. And I knew I did very poorly the way that I handled the conversation. In fact, what I teach and train people to do with pledge, I did none of it. So I was berating myself and just, yeah, I knew I needed to go back.
So it shows that even though you know the steps, sometimes it's really hard to do it because you're involved emotionally. So it takes practice.
Absolutely. I couldn't have said that better. When I teach the process, and I'll share with you here in just a moment, it is really simple at the outset, but it is difficult when you're in the moment if you're not walking with the awareness and going into a situation determined to use the process and to do it well. And I just wasn't thinking about it that morning for whatever reason. I was just so totally focused on getting him to do what I wanted him to do, which isn't a healthy way to approach a conversation.
So how was your dad when you saw him 3 days later?
Well, it's very interesting because what happened is I went in with the mindset of apologizing and then knowing this time what I needed to do. So I went in and apologized. I said, Dad, I'm so sorry. I did a terrible job of communicating, of interacting with you 3 days ago. I didn't do anything that I teach. And I'm sorry. I really am. And Dad, what I really want to do is just take this time to listen, to understand your thoughts about why it is that you're really hesitant about going to a place here in town called Homestead Assisted Living. And I just got quiet and I just listened. And that was all I had planned to do that morning. I wasn't going to come back with any of my thoughts, my reactions, my reasons. All I want to do is to listen to make sure that morning he felt heard. And that happened, thankfully. And we
Good.
walked away from that morning time, much better connection again and so forth. And then the real interesting, Rebecca, that took place is 3 weeks later, he calls me up and says, hey, Mark, Mom and I have been thinking, and I think we need to talk to that gal you had mentioned and maybe look at moving into a place where we could get some assistance in our living.
So basically it was their idea. You can't force someone to do something that they don't want to do. So somehow within the talks, you have to make it their idea, right?
And at the very least, give them space and time to consider it so that they decide to do it.
Mhm.
Whether or not it's their idea, yes, that's helpful. But I need to give them space and time. I was trying to force them into it, and that doesn't work. It doesn't work hardly for anybody, anyone. It's when
Right.
we're only forced into a situation. So I needed to give them space and time to process it, to consider it, and then make a decision. Yeah.
It's very kind. I
Yeah.
I wish I had this method when I took care of my mom for over 12 years because I know it would have made a lot of situations simpler. Yeah, so share with my audience your 6 amazing steps.
Thank you. Yeah. Yeah. So again, on the one hand, there's simple steps, and as I share them, and as your audience listens to them, I would say virtually 100% of the time, whenever I've taught this in any kind of a level, large audience, podcast, anywhere at all, people say, yes, that's true. That's what I want. That's how I would want people to relate to me. So I'm just calling out what those things are, you see. And we put in a process. Pledge is an acronym to help us to remember the 6 steps. And then we love the word because it's the word itself is a reminder for us to do well in our conversations. It's like, I want to say, I have a pledge to love my wife. That I pledge to honor and respect my parents. If you and I were in a conflict, Rebecca, I would say, Rebecca, you're a new friend of mine, and I would like to pledge friendship, and then that I'm going to do all my efforts, put all my efforts forth to do all I can to enhance our friendship. So it's like a pledge to do that. So that's just a little side. But the word, again, stands for 6 steps. The first one is simply to pause, P for pause. And the idea is, at any given time, and we find ourselves in a conflict, just somebody hit the pause button, right? We've all not done that and done exactly what I did with my father, and we pressed through and we made things worse. We end up escalating. We end up saying things that hurt another person. There's a proverb that says, death and life are in the power of the tongue. So literally everything that I speak all day long in every conversation can bring life to that conversation, to that person, to that relationship, or can bring death and destruction. So we need to pause for several reasons. One of them is, again, to remind us of the very thing that what comes out of my mouth is really important. Second of all, it helps us to dial down our emotions. There are PET scans that show when our emotions are real high, the rational part of the brain shuts down. So you've said it or heard it said, I have too, someone saying, I was so mad I couldn't even think straight.
Yeah.
And it's literally true. The emotions so high, the brain's the thinking part of the brain shuts down. We literally can't think straight. So we're not going to engage in a healthy, helpful, loving process. This is just not going to happen.
Right. Defensive.
We got defensive reaction. So we've got to dial down and stop and get quiet. Let those emotions settle, and then remind ourselves: this is a new friend. This is my wife. This is my child. This is my mom, my dad. I respect them. I honor them. I love them. I want this to go well. Remind myself of that during the time of pause, so that when I get back into the conversation, that I will go down a better track, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the first step, pause. The second step is to listen. So whenever we're in a conflict situation, we both tend to want to speak at the same time or right after each other. And we know, again, it doesn't work. Someone has to volunteer to listen first. So on that day when I was in a conversation with my dad, the first time, it would have been far better for me to have said, Dad, Mom, I'm here today because I want to talk to you about a place called Homestead in Wichita. That is a homestead assisted living facility. And I'd like to talk with you about it. First of all, I'd like to ask you a question and say, tell me your thoughts. What ideas, what goes through your mind when you think about moving in a place like that? Then I go into listening. Would have been far better for me to start that way, but I didn't.
Giving them a choice or listening to their ideas of what they think of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right off the bat, because knowing there's likely going to be tension and conflict. So let me do my best at the outset to help this to become a healthy conversation, a helpful conversation, right? So I didn't do that today, but then 3 days later I did. I came back to listening, and again, it was huge. So whenever we find ourselves in a conflict, or really in any kind of a conversation that could be tense or whatever, we just want to say, hey, let me listen first. So I'll volunteer. Usually I will volunteer to listen first, not that day, but usually I'll volunteer to listen first. And in so doing, I'm making every effort I can to listen, to understand the other person and their perspective. Even listening to learn from them. What are some thoughts or ideas that they might have that I've never even thought about? Right? I need to listen to
Right.
learn from them and understand them. Unfortunately, most of us, what we do is we only listen long enough to build our defense.
Right. Waiting to respond instead of listening. Yeah.
Exactly. And then we argue that we have indeed listened. And I would say, okay, you did, but you listened for the wrong things. You're listening to find out all the things that you could point out that that's not true. It didn't happen last week. It happened 2 weeks prior to that. And I don't always do it. You say always do it, but I remember just yesterday I did something differently. And we pick out all the things that we heard them say wrong. So we're listening.
Hmm.
And then we come back as soon as as soon as that other person takes a breath, we come back and say, you're wrong here, 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 and here. And then we smile.
It's like, who's right? Who wants to
Exactly.
be right? Yeah.
And that's what it becomes.
Hmm.
Yeah. So instead, and again, we're all guilty of that. I'm guilty of that. If I'm not consciously aware, if I'm not intentionally working the process that I understand to be the most helpful way to communicate, if I'm not even practicing myself, I'll default to the exact same thing as I did on my father the first time.
So probably the best thing to do is try it with a friend, work on it before you get into the difficult situation, knowing that the situation you're walking into with your parents or whoever it is going to be difficult. Practice with someone, right? I mean, that's the only way you're going to learn it properly.
I love that. So good. And you're right. I love the idea. Just, you're going to have a difficult conversation 3 days from now. Call up a friend, say, can we do coffee, whatever, like this, and can we kind of almost like role play this? And can I practice using this process in the most helpful way that I can?
Right. And I think that's really important is the practicing before you actually get into the situation.
I love that. It's a beautiful idea. That's a beautiful idea. So again, the steps: pause, listen. Third step is echo. Okay. We pause to dial down, remind ourselves of the other person, their value, that my words really matter. Okay. Life or death. And then I also want to, one more thing in the pause, I want to shift my focus and my heart, if you will, from one of being heard to one of willing to listen first, right? Because most of us step in those conversations demanding to be heard. And that's not a good posture, if you will. It's not a posture of love, of respect, of honoring to the other, of coming in, demanding to be heard. But most of us are there at the outset. So I want to create that shift in my mind and my heart. I'm here for the other person right now first. Then I volunteer to listen first, and I listen to understand them and to learn anything that I might have missed. The next step I move into is the step of echo, where I want to echo back what it is I heard them say. My son says this is his favorite step. Okay.
Why is that?
Because we want to know that we've been heard. If you and I were in a conflict or something, Rebecca, you could tell me, what you were frustrated about an hour ago when you and I were on the phone. We weren't, but just we were, you could have been telling me what you're upset about. And I could have said, okay, I see, I understand. And I get quiet. You wouldn't know if I understood you or not.
They're just words.
Would
You're
you?
just saying, I understand, and they're just words.
Yeah, yeah. And the only way that you can know that they're not just words and that I actually really did hear you and understand you is if I could echo back. So I think this is what you were saying, Rebecca. You're saying this and this that took place on the phone an hour ago in our conversation, yada, yada, yada. And I say it back to you. Then you go, I think he really heard it. I think he really got it. And then I move to the next step, which is D, disarm the tension between us, okay, by validating your perspective. People make this really difficult, but it's really easy. All I need to do is simply say, I see what you're saying now. I understand why you felt the way you did after the phone call an hour ago. That makes sense. I understand. For my dad, 3 days later, when I went and sat and talked with them again, and my dad said something like several things, and then he said one thing that was like the aha that I hadn't even thought about. Was he said, Mark, and he was just, just still kind of tensed, upset. And he said, Mark, and I suppose one of the real reasons I don't want to go into a place like that is because every time I hear someone does that, probably within a year or two, they die.
Oh,
So I don't want to go there because I'm afraid that that's gonna be what's gonna happen. We're gonna go and I'm gonna die. And I went, right?
now it makes sense.
Wow, it makes sense. See,
Yeah,
I missed that, Rebecca, because I wasn't listening well. It made me sad that I hadn't known my dad in that regard.
yeah.
So I echoed back and said, oh, so that's one of the big things you're afraid if you're going to go away and that within a year or two you're going to die. And he goes, yes, that's my
Oh,
echo. And then I validate, I disarm any further tension by saying, Dad, that makes sense. I didn't even think about that. But of course, I can see why you'd feel that way, why that would make you so hesitant to move in. Wow. Made all the difference in the world. And
hmm.
when I validated his concern, his fears, any remaining tension between us just dropped off.
I can see why that works.
Yeah. We all trying to argue our point, and we keep coming back. We keep coming back. We keep coming back. Why? Because we don't think we're either, no, number one, we're either being heard or that it makes sense. And once we know we've been heard and it makes sense to the person, there's no more reason to argue.
It's a conversation.
Now we're having a conversation and we're
Mhm.
learning from each other and connecting again rather than pushing each other away.
Right.
And that's what we all want. We all want to be connected
Yeah,
with each.
productive conversations, definitely. It's important.
Yeah. So that's pause, listen, echo, disarm the tension by validating. The next step is give. Here's what typically happens at this point in the conversation. We say something like, we're disarming by validating. Again, that makes sense. I can understand that. I can see that. I can appreciate that. Those are all kinds of validating statements. But the problem is what we often do is we say something like, I can appreciate that, but, or
Mm.
I understand now what you're saying, but that's not what
But
I meant. Right? And we throw in that but.
mhm.
There's no gap at all. We just say, I understand, but. So it's like a really quick, the person on the other end goes,
That negates everything.
that's exactly right.
Yeah.
And we're all guilty of that. I was talking at a conversation with my wife just 2 nights ago, and I caught myself. Yeah, but, and then I go, oh, honey, I'm sorry. And we both laughed because we know that process backwards, forward, and everything else, And, but again, caught me off guard. So what I did with my wife 2 nights ago is the moment I recognized that, the moment I said, yeah, but all I simply said was, honey, I realized what I just did. I'm sorry. I'm going to get quiet. I want to hear the rest of what you have to say. And I want to validate and let you know it really makes sense. And then get quiet.
Like
Because
that.
that's what has to happen after you disarm the tension by validating. There's literally, I've studied this 1,001 ways. There's nothing else we can do after we say that makes sense. I understand what you're saying. Is we get quiet. Yeah. And what happens is in that quiet, those quiet moments
Mhm.
is like if you and I were in that conflict, right? And
Yep.
I say, Rebecca, that makes sense. I can see what you're saying. I get quiet. What happens is something happens inside of you. It's like your spirit settles
Mhm.
and you begin to think, I think he really means it. I think he really means it. I think he really does understand. He has heard me and understands, and he's not arguing anymore. And that dissolves the tension and creates the connection. So, yeah, the fifth step of give then can only come after that break, the break in the quiet. So the fifth step of give can only be taken or moved into um, after there's this break between or after disarming but validating, right? That makes sense. I get quiet for 30 seconds to a minute. I just let it settle in. Okay. Then give is supposed to represent the idea of there might be another perspective. You had a perspective. I might have a perspective too that I might think might be helpful for both of us to see as also as part of the conversation. And all along the way, right, I'm listening to you, and in my head, I'm thinking, that's not exactly what happened. That's not what I meant. And so I want to jump in then to say my perspective. But if I jump in then, we're going to escalate. So when I'm listening, I can't jump in. When I'm echoing, I could say, okay, I see what you're saying, but that's not going to help him. I can
Yeah.
validate. I can see what you're saying, but that's not going to help. I'm left, perhaps, not always, but perhaps still having something that I want to contribute to the conversation. I'd like to give some of my perspective. The only time I can do that is after I get quiet, after disarm, let things settle. And then after 30 seconds to a minute, I might be able to say, Rebecca, I have some thoughts that I think would also be helpful to the conversation that I'd like to put out on the table. Can I give them to you? And I ask, can I give you thoughts from my perspective?
You're asking permission. That's good.
Yeah. Rather than forcing or demanding you to hear me.
Mhm.
It also might be the case where you honestly feel as a new friend, you really feel loved by me as a new friend because I paused and I determined I wasn't going to say unkind things. I listened well, so you felt heard. I echoed back so you know that I really did hear you, and I validated to show you that your perspective mattered. You might, as a friend, now have felt so cared for and loved by me that you might then simply give me the conversation yourself. You might say, Mark, thank you so much for listening. Do you have anything you want to give me as far as a perspective? So you might give it me the microphone, so to speak, or I might ask for the microphone so that I can give my perspective. So then I go ahead and do that. I give my perspective about what I thought happened back there. And at this point, you are now in the pause, listen, echo, disarm frame of mind. Because now you're pausing rather than interrupting me. Now you're going to listen to hear my perspective and understand and learn from it. You're going to echo back what I'm saying to you now and find a way to be validating of my thoughts as well. And that basically drops us down to the bottom step, which is engage. It means several different things, but one of the core things it means is we engage this process around and around, back and forth, because both people and both sides matter.
How does this work if you have a family member who does not know the pledge method or is not able to understand it fully if, dementia sets in or something like that? How does that work one-sided?
Yes, it's really important. It's really important. And so often people think, well, the other person doesn't know it, so it doesn't really work. And I always say, well, what is the work that we're trying to accomplish, we're trying to do? And I tell them that though I teach the use of this process and these principles in the context of a conflict, and though, yes, I believe if we do this and do this well, the chances go way up that we'll be able to resolve our conflicts. I tell people that ultimately ultimately what I'm doing in teaching this process is I'm teaching you how to love well in the way you communicate. And I say, that's the work to be done. That's the ultimate work. Rebecca, I don't have any control over whether or not we ultimately come to a good conclusion. And you may not know anything that I'm talking about as far as pledge, but I can do the process because my aim in our relationship is to do whatever work I can to not only maintain, but to build our friendship. So whether you know the process or not, I'm going to use it. You're telling me something. I may disagree, but I'm not going to interrupt. I'm going to listen because maybe there's some things here that I haven't thought about. Maybe there's something I need to learn. I need to understand where you're coming from. And I'm going to do you the honor of listening to understand that. And then, because you matter, I'm going to show you that I've understood by echoing back and validating.
So it's up to you to be the calming person. And even though they don't understand it or don't want to cooperate with that type of discussion, you can still hold to your end and it's going to work. I can see
It's
that
going to
happen.
work in the sense that I'm going to do my part in loving the other person well. I'm going to do my part in doing what I can to make our relationship the best it can be. I'm going to do my work to bridge, using the process to bridge and do everything I can to create connection. I can't control what the other person does. I can ask them, and that's another thing I can do. I can ask them when I'm sharing something. I could say something like, I have some thoughts to share. When I do, can you echo back so that I make sure that you've heard what I had to say? Okay. So I can kind of help them walk through the process, even though they don't know what they're doing, by
Right.
guiding them in such a way. And I've done that on various occasions. But the primary work I want to get to say is my effort, um, is my energy is spent towards loving the other person and doing all that I can to enrich our relationship from my end.
I think this is really important, not only for, we've talked about the different groups, but parents and children, young children, teaching them because then they're going to learn that and know it growing up. And I think it's going to be very beneficial, especially right now as
Yes.
people are getting together for the holidays, coming home, visiting mom and dad or whoever they're visiting. And as tensions get tight and, you get frustrated because mom's doing this, dad's doing this, and how do you fix it? So that's why this is really, really important is to understand this type of conversation.
It is. I'm so grateful. I'm so like encouraged when talking with someone like yourself, and I hear that you get it,
Yeah.
that you
Yeah.
get it, which is I'm just I'm so grateful.
And
Thank you.
it's practicing. It really is. You know, I want to thank you for sharing your personal story because I think it's very powerful
Mm,
because it shows that even someone who practices it on a regular basis and teaches it can step off track.
yeah, yeah.
And it's important to hear your loved ones because they're going through a difficult time. And to them, you're still their little baby and they don't want to be told what to
Mm,
do,
mm.
right?
Yes. Again, need to create that space. I can give ideas and thoughts, but I need to create that space for them to consider it, to process it, and make a decision as well. Oh, so good. And it's so important as we talk about coming into the holidays that there's so many emotions, so many dynamics taking place between all of us. And uh, yeah, how important we practice this. One thing I would add to this that can be helpful even in the holidays is I also again talk about the idea that I teach this in the context of a conflict, but in reality, this principles pause, listen, echo, disarm, give, and engage. And the process, the sequence of steps are steps we can use every day, all day long in every conversation. And that's how we practice best.
Yeah, I'm gonna go practice that with every conversation I have today.
Yeah, seriously, because think about the pausing, right? Somebody's talking and we want to interrupt, we want to interject, and we just, no, pause, get quiet, stay listening to understand the other person. They have something to say, or they wouldn't be talking. Can I hear them understand what they want to say? Can I even take a moment and say, wow, that's a great thought. I never thought of this, da 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 da, da, and I echo back. And then there's no, in a regular conversation, there's no tension to disarm, but I can still be validating.
Exactly, and there's no right, there's no wrong, it's opinion, and you can't just say, "My opinion's right, and you have to do it this way," right? Because everyone's gonna have a different opinion,
Right.
and a different way of doing things, and a different understanding of where they wanna be in their life,
Mm.
right?
Yes. Yes. So
That's
we come back to doing our part well, honoring the other person, loving the other person well, doing our work, creating the best we can in our relationship. And then we have to let
that's
them.
great. I love your story. I love the pledge method. Mark, how can people get a hold of you?
Sure. The easiest way is just pledgetalk.com, my website. And I'm realizing I don't have a copy of my book. I was going to hold it up a second. Or
I
you
have it.
got a copy?
I
Okay.
have it. Yes.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
you can go to my website, get that book, or you can go to Amazon and get the Pledge of a Lifetime book. I wrote in the form of a narrative of a couple struggling in their marriage, and they go see someone and they help them to figure that out.
Is there anything else you wanna leave my listeners with, Mark?
I think maybe one thing, and it kind of goes back to what you were saying a couple different times, Rebecca. This is going to take work. I think we have to start with saying, do I want to do better in my relationships? The reality is, we all need help, right? In our relationships, we all need help with communication. And we just say, do I want to do better? And I want to say, we can do better. We really can do better, but it's going to take work. Like in anything, you want to become a better cook, right? You want
Right.
to do your job better. We all go to ongoing training, and we do practice in a sense every day. We're going to have to work at this. And when it doesn't go the right way or the way that you'd hoped, first time or second time or third time, don't give into the temptation that says, that's dumb, this is stupid, it doesn't really work. Keep in mind, we're not trying to get it to work, meaning the other person to respond the way I want them to. All we have to do is say, did I do my part? And sometimes my part is only to pause. And I didn't interrupt. And that was all I had a chance to do, was just to pause in that conversation. And I want to say, but if you just did that, good job. You showed honor to the other one, that they matter by not interrupting. You showed love in a real way in that conversation. And I want to say, huge, you're well on your way to becoming wonderful, great at using Pledge Talk. So keep at it, keep working at it yourself, not giving up, because I promise you, and I'm sure even as you listen to me, you know these are helpful ideas. And if you keep working at them, they'll become a part of who you are, and you'll become a better lover in your relationships and enhance your connections. It'll happen.
Thank you very much. So if there's just one thing that someone can do, it's to pause, and
Mm.
that's gonna change everything,
I
and
have a friend who
listen.
told me he worked at it for a year, just pausing.
Yeah, that's great. Mark, I wanna thank you very much for sharing your heart behind your work. You've given families a way to slow down, breathe, and speak to each other.
Thank you. Thank you, Rebecca. Thank you
Y
for your work and for having me and giving me the opportunity to share this with people. It's my passion. Thank you.
You're welcome. And for my listeners, thank you for joining Seniors Home Zone. Until the next time, take care of yourself and the people you love.